Hello, anybody who's watching this. Welcome to the bad idea. I'll explain in a bit, but welcome to Unbiased History Rome 16, Constantine the Great, by Devachati, obviously. And this is a bad idea because I just recorded the previous one, but I didn't feel as kind of taxed by it. Like usual, if I'll watch a video maybe 10 episodes ago, an episode of Devachti maybe 5 episodes ago, I'd feel like that was a lot of information to get, and that's enough for me to record. But now I felt fine. I'm gonna record another one, but it is 40 minutes long. It's gonna be taxing a lot on my psyche, and hopefully I will be fine. But I don't know when this video is gonna come out. I'm not gonna make it right after the last one, for the reasons I said in the previous video, in the beginning of it, the copyright thing. But yeah, just shit on my screen. Yes, it was. Whatever that was. Anyway, if you want to help out the channel, there's the donation link in the description below, but you can also just subscribe, like, comment, do whatever you want, and let's begin. Oh dear lord. I feel like One Punch Man is still very underrated. It's fucking amazing. You should watch it if you haven't. Or read the manga. So the style doesn't change unlike season 1 and season 2 of the anime. But season 2 of anime is definitely underrated. It's not as bad as people say. If you heard that it's bad and that's why you didn't watch it, please watch it. It's not as bad. It just changes the style for a bit lesser. It's lesser style than the first one, but it's not Seven Deadly Sins third season bad. Like nowhere fucking near. Or what is it, X-Arm? Whatever. I got hyped. I got hyped immediately. I doubt he's fighting with a P, but I like it anyway. I don't care that it's loud. Camera's probably too shit to tell, but I do have goosebumps, and I've never had goosebumps in like this. All right, probably not a single reaction. Maybe in the music stuff, maybe baby metal. I don't know. Not in that, definitely not.
It was the height of the crisis of the 3rd century. Claudius Gothicus
Made me
had
cry.
recently saved Nicaea from the
so
Gothic
good.
hordes. Thanks to him, his great-nephew could bear a child with his loved one, during the reign of Rome's greatest emperor. In time, the crisis would pass, and that child would surpass even his own legacy. This is the tale of Flavius Valerius Constantinus, or as history would know him, Constantine the Great. From a very early age, Constantine had it hard. Born and raised on the most dangerous imperial border, his father was constantly out fighting barbarians, leaving him to be raised by his mother, Helena, a saintly figure. The years passed, and eventually he received news of his father's promotion as Caesar, and his engagement to the emperor's daughter. Still loved by his father, he was sent to Diocletian's court, where he was to learn how to be an emperor from one of the very best. And in the battlefield, Constantine proved himself to be an emperor from one
His chin indicates a lot of promise. That's what I think every time I look at these people. I'm like, okay, that's a virgin. That's a different thing. That nah, no Chad, so that's no good.
One of the very best. And in the battlefield, Constantine proved himself a prodigy, crushing barbarian invasions with Diocletian in the Danube, and slaughtering Sassanids under Galerius in the east, gaining the respect, praise, and adoration of all
Evil
his
tits are
natural
still
leader.
tits.
Returning to Nicaea, Constantine was present for the Great Persecution, seeing that no matter how many Christians were killed, it never seemed to be enough. He didn't know quite to think of it, but one thing was certain: killing them all didn't seem to work. Diocletian knew greatness when he saw it, and together with Galerius, he feared that Constantine might prove a threat to the tetrarchic system. So once Diocletian finally resigned, seeking to restore the unfamiliar succession system of the 5 good emperors, he proclaimed neither Constantine nor Maxentius would be Caesars, their talent or obvious villainy not quite the point. And after Diocletian retired to his cabbage farm and Galerius took over, the new Augustus sought to test his co-emperor's son, throwing Constantine into a one-on-one fight against a lion, which he won, then on a hunt of Sarmatians beyond the Danube, returning with the barbarians' heads, thus proving himself. Already an adult, Constantine hooked up with his first love, Minervina, with whom he had his first son, Crispus, named after his great-grandfather. One night, as Galerius was partying, after being asked by both Constantius and Constantine to let father and son reunite, he relented, letting him go and crush the legs of every horse on his way to ensure he would keep going. After traversing his way west, Constantine was reunited with his father in Bononia, even if it would prove to be for a short while. By the time he was crossing into Britain, he had learned much of the empire he lived on, the heroes that defined it, the fates they met, and the gods they worshipped, all influencing him deeply. Fighting beyond the wall, Constantine almost finished Agricola's legacy, but had to halt, for his father's end was at hand. Marching south to Aboracum, Constantius uttered his last words, declaring his support for Constantine to become an Augustus, and then dying. And the legions, in their grief, acclaimed Constantine as Augustus right then and there, to his deep surprise and confusion. Putting his grief aside, he reported everything to Emperor Galerius, and after hearing about the hasty acclamation, Galerius was kinda pissed. But after promoting Severus as the new Western Augustus, needing a new Western Caesar as fast as possible, Galerius named Constantine as such, leaving him hoping to live up to his father's support. And after that, Hispania declared loyalty to him, since Severus II was so distant if anything, and he would prove himself worthy, defending the empire from both Picts, Franks, and Alemanni, kicking the former beyond the wall, having the Frankish kings thrown to the lions, and having the Alemanni beg for mercy so hard that he had it minted into a coin. And in Trier, Constantine upgraded the western capital to his standards, ending the Christian persecutions and overseeing the burial of Minervina,
what was the western
who had
capital?
recently died. Hearing of Constantine's achievements, Maxentius kept bursting in anger, while his sister,
Licinius?
Fausta, stood by listening to his envious bitching. With the Western Augustus now being Severus II, a friend of the Senate-hating Eastern Tetrarchs, the senators saw in Maxentius their opportunity to retake power. Every day they fueled his anger and victimization, all heightened by 2 new announcements Severus II made. 1. Rome was now to pay taxes, as did everyone else in the empire. And 2. The Praetorian Guard was to be, finally, thank the gods, abolished. The scum of the empire now united in outrage, the Senate...
Praise Saul! For the love of God! They were doing their thing for far too long. Fuck me. In the last video there was a thing as well where there was sent away and stuff, but fully abolished. Fuck off. Finally.
The Praetorians acclaimed Maxentius as Augustus, who instantly accepted and promised all of their old powers back. Using the senators and Praetorians, Maxentius took over most of Italy, and awaited Galerius to legitimize his usurpation. But when Galerius heard of this, he exploded in rage, immediately sending Severus II with an army to go crush him. But once Severus II arrived in Italy, Maxentius just hid behind the Aurelian walls like the spineless coward he was. Unable to breach it, and with his Maximian veterans being bribed to defect him, Severus gave up trying. And speaking of Maximian, he was still grumbling over in his retirement villa. But when the senatorial and praetorian envoys came in pleading him to return back to power, after pretending to be reluctant, he went right along with them. Now reunited with his own father, Maxentius sent him to go defeat Severus, who had by then camped north in Ravenna. Once Maximian arrived with overwhelming numbers, he promised Severus he would spare his life if he surrendered. Seeing no way out, Severus did just that, and then Maximian killed him. Yeah, Diocletian really was holding it all together, wasn't he? Now betrayed by his ex-tetrarch, Galerius' side, leaving the east under the supervision of Licinius, his best friend, while he marched to Italy. And while Constantine slaughtered more Germanic invaders, he received a letter from Maxentius of all cunts begging for his help. And though Constantine refused to betray Galerius, after getting engaged with Fausta, he agreed to be neutral as good faith, with Maximian sent to oversee his succession as Augustus from Severus, since Galerius was rather busy at the moment. Unfortunately, Maxentius had already taken over all of Italy, so Galerius had to carve his way through hostile cities and lack of supplies. Laying siege to Rome, Galerius offered to settle things diplomatically, but Maxentius had shoved his head too far up his own ass for that, hiding behind the Aurelian walls, again, bribing the lawful emperor's soldiers, again, thus forcing him to retreat, again. Smug as fuck, Maximian went to oversee Constantine's ascension from Western Caesar to Western Augustus, married him to his daughter Fausta, and all out proclaiming to be the senior Augustus, like Diocletian was. Yeah, he was, so much so that when he met again with Maxentius to discuss their future aspirations, they conflicted so much that they started to fight over who was really in charge. Watching Maxentius getting thrown around, the Praetorian Guard became really mad, forcing Maximian to flee for his life.
We can kill
Back in
emperors.
Ecumenical, as
Fuck
Galerius
off.
lamented the current state
All
of the
of you.
tetrarchy, he was visited by Maximian, now seeking asylum. I'm not kidding, he chose Galerius of all emperors. Not a lethal mistake though, as he would prove himself useful for what was to come next. Organizing a meeting of the original tetrarchs, Galerius convinced Diocletian to leave his farm for once, and talk with his past colleagues. Meeting up in a fort in the Danube, Maximian begged Diocletian to return to power with him, flat out refusing, and saying, "If only you saw the majestic cabbages I was growing back home, you too would give up the pursuit of worldly power." Diocletian, cabbage farmer. And after telling Maximian to go back to retirement, Galerius sought approval for his reform of the tetrarchy. Galerius and Daia would remain as they were.
308, so now I
Constantine would be
definitely know
demoted
that
back to Caesar,
it's 4th
despite
century
Galerius
now.
not having the authority to do that. Maxentius would still be an usurper, and Licinius would be inserted in as the new Western Augustus. And speaking of the usurper, he was by then brutally crushing revolts, ruling tyrannically and getting hated more and more by the Roman Italians. To recompensate
make
the
himself
scorned Westerners, Galerius gave them the title of Son of the Augusti, which both of them refused for very different reasons. Which brings us back to Daia, still Caesar of the East and yet now calling himself Augustus as well, making up 5 in total. Having outlived his usefulness to Galerius, Maximian then fled to the court of Constantine in the west, where he was welcomed with respect. Constantine then gave Maximian some legions to keep an eye on Maxentius in the Alps, while he went to crush more Germans on the Rhine. And the minute Constantine went away, Maximian told everyone Constantine had died, and that they all should acclaim him as Augustus, the senior Augustus, which everyone called bullshit on, sending word to Constantine about it, forcing him to abandon his campaign. After failing to bribe them to his side, Maximian then fled for his life again, eventually hiding in Massalia, modern Marseilles or however you pronounce it.
You were
Constantine then arrived, was
Why
allowed
did
in
you
with no
do
problems,
this
hunted
all?
down Maximian and spared him,
I guess
telling him not to do something stupid again, which was just the last straw for Maximian. After a lifetime of failures, he would prove himself competent by killing his own son-in-law. After implicating his daughter Fausta in the murder, he sneaked into Constantine's room and stabbed him to death.
Oh
Only that
no,
the
it's not
Constantine he
him.
killed was a decoy.
I didn't
placed by
believe that.
Fausta, who had already alerted
Only Praetorians allowed to kill emperors.
Constantine, having Maximian apprehended, earning her the
But still get
emperor's
fucked.
trust. A failure once again, Maximian was told by Constantine to just go kill himself, which he did, hanging himself to death. One of the few things he set out to do on his own, and achieved successfully. Finally able to sleep in peace, Constantine
I feel like he had so many failures in life. The only thing held him together was being an emperor, or like whatever they were called, dominus. Oops. Together with Diocletian. Diocletes. Diocletian. Diocletes. Why does it sound like I'm pronouncing it wrong? Whatever. Well, they were co-emperors or whatever you want to call that. Whatever they actually called is what I meant. And then when he was strived with power, he didn't want to, but he was made to, and that was the only thing that he actually kind of succeeded. Probably he fought that, and then he strive for power more and more and more and more because that was the only thing.
experienced a divine vision.
It still wasn't the
Out of a
worst.
spiritual realm, the two divine
Sad to see him
aspects,
go like that.
Apollo and Victoria, emerged, gifting him a laurel wreath and proclaiming he would rule long and with health. And once awake, his piety went even further beyond. The gods of the sun and victory appearing was no coincidence. The more he thought about it, the clearer the truth of a grander monotheistic god appeared, known to all Romans as Deus Sol Invictus. While in the east, Galerius met the same fate as Diocletian, suffering from a disease so bad that the stench of his rotting organs were smelled all across Nicaea. As his final act, he declared the great persecution a failure, proclaiming an end to it, and then dying, painfully. Daia then re-emerged, taking over Galerius' possessions and even his court, imprisoning both Diocletian's wife and daughter. For as it turns out, Daia was a huge cunt. When news of it all reached Diocletian, it struck him hard. The tetrarchy he had created was in ruins. His family was imprisoned, and every single one of his friends were now gone. Thinking it was all his fault, he hanged himself in his palace, saying goodbye to this doomed world. After his death,
I don't think his idea of tetrarchy was that bad, but maybe he gave too much power. He should have had like what USA has now and like Russia has, something similar. Well, of course he couldn't look in the other countries and then use their model. That's not what I mean. I just mean he should have had one emperor to rule like smaller emperors, whatever the names would have been, the Caesars or Augustuses or Senior Augustus, whatever. There would have been one emperor above them all. So it was still one empire and then smaller regions, but it would have been a bit better. I don't know.
Licinius did the same as Daia, seizing Galerius' past domains and setting their
Again,
border between.
It's the easiest thing in the world to see something go wrong and then he should have done it differently. Yeah, no fucking shit.
The Bosphorus Strait, leaving both of them unsatisfied. And fuck pleb, now the empire was truly divided between 4 Augusti, only 2 of which were legitimate, the western ones being polar opposites and the eastern ones despising each other. The absolute state. No wonder Diocletian killed himself. By far the worst of them was Maxentius, who, despite hating his father, proclaimed he would avenge him by declaring war on Constantine, out of nowhere, throwing the tetrarchy into civil war. Receiving this news, Constantine vowed to remove the tyrant Maxentius from Rome, for God and empire. Oh, and by the way, it's about time I told you that Constantius' second marriage rendered his son 6 half-siblings: Julius, Dalmatius, Constantia, Eutropia, Anastasia, and Fausta. And no, don't give me that look. We've only begun with the name dumps. This is the Constantinian dynasty, you pleb. Get used to it. Constantine then started out allying himself with Licinius against Maxentius, promising his sister Constantia's hand in marriage, which provoked Daia into recognizing Maxentius' rule if he allied with him, which he agreed to. It was all now a team deathmatch. Preparing for the war, Constantine's advisor recommended him to stay in the defensive, for whether if Maxentius attacked or stayed out, his defeat was imminent. Constantine agreed, which is why he proclaimed his intent to invade Italy, telling everyone to start packing. Constantine then crossed the Alps with 40,000 men, only a quarter of his total army, still mainly focused on defending his citizens from barbarians as he was. While in Rome, Maxentius ordered the patricians to build him a huge basilica in his honor, but he was too lazy to actually finish it, instead sending his minions to go fight his war for him. And as he entered Italy, Constantine was halted at Sigusium, which he dealt with by setting its walls on fire, and then scaling them, taking it with ease, and forbidding any looting, showing to all his benevolence. Maxentius then responded by sending a huge cavalry army.
The fact that they're polar opposites will work greatly in his favor if he's gonna keep acting like it, because he rules like he kills, he makes people do their thing, but he just will be peaceful in his way to Rome. That will hand him a lot of support from, I guess, not really worthy plebs. I don't know.
Army to attack them near Turin, which, astoundingly, Constantine encircled with his foot soldiers, descending on it and dismounting the riders to their deaths. What few survived then fled to Turin, and were refused entry by the locals, who then happily opened their gates to Constantine. After that, more and more cities surrendered to him, and he was then cheerfully welcomed into Mediolanum as a liberator.
I like that the guy was going die, 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 and now he's going mercy, mercy, mercy.
After resting, Constantine marched east to face a huge Maxentian army led by his Praetorian prefect, which was camped out on the heavily fortified fortress of Verona, covered in 3 sides by rivers.
No
and to cross
piss
the river,
for
Constantine
him.
sent a tiny detachment of cavalry to scout the area, which the prefect noticed, sending a way bigger army to quash the attempt, and getting crushed instead.
Oh.
Constantine then laid siege to Verona,
that sucks for
allowing
you,
the prefects
guy.
to flee, and returned with an even bigger army, to which Constantine sent one tiny battalion to fight off. The insulted prefect then attacked, got his entire army destroyed, and died in battle.
Yeah, fine. Fuck him.
After this show of force, Verona just surrendered to Constantine, and later all remaining cities in North Italy did so as well. Now more terrified than ever, Maxentius abandoned his people, hoarding all of his troops and resources into Rome, destroying all bridges on the Tiber and hoping the Aurelian walls would save him again. Constantine was then cheered on as he approached Rome, camping nearby where the Milvian bridge once stood, and while he threw games as a distraction, the crowd started cheering for Constantine, declaring him to be invincible. Fitting, as for around then, Constantine gathered his men for a march that would change the fate of the world. As they marched, Constantine's vision was taken over by a radiant beam of light from the sky. Over the light of the sun, a gigantic symbol had manifested in the sky, beneath a divine commandment. In hoc signo vincis. By this sign,
I wanted to praise the sun, but I hit my hand on the edge of a table.
Once it vanished,
a sharp
not even
part.
Constantine knew what to really make of it. Later that day, going to sleep and praying for answers, he experienced another vision. As lucid as ever, he woke up in an even grander divine realm, and again, he wasn't alone. Beside him was someone he knew, yet didn't understand. He was all of the gods of Roman tradition, and yet beyond them, the Logos in the flesh, the Alpha and the Omega, Sol Invictus, and even more. Before him stood the one true God, and now he appeared to Constantine as Jesus Christus, the dead dualistic himself. And what at first sounded insane now made more sense than anything. Sol Invictus, Jesus Christus, different interpretive aspects of the same overarching deity. And as the revelation shined light on many old questions, the true God again stood before him, telling Constantine to bear the first 2 letters of Christus's name as his symbol and that of his allegiance, to which he accepted and returned to the mortal realm. And once he woke up, Constantine got straight out of bed and started hunting down for a shitload of paint. The next morning, Maxentius celebrated his 6th anniversary since his usurpation, and Rome's priests told him that the enemy of Rome would be defeated that very day. Surprised with joy, Maxentius ordered his troops out of the city to finally face Constantine. And since he had destroyed the Milvian bridge earlier, Maxentius ordered his men to build a temporary bridge to cross the Tiber.
You dumb bastard! How dumb can you fucking get?
Distance, and Maxentius could not believe what he saw.
It's him. I wonder how many copyrights I'm gonna get on the last in this video. I always wonder with the wife of these videos.
For the glory of Deus, Constantine ordered his cavalry to charge and annihilate Maxentius' cavalry, and marched his legions forward. Despite heavily outnumbered, Constantine pushed them further and further backwards to the Tiber River. His will to fight already broken, Maxentius ordered a retreat back to the Aurelian walls, and what ensued was pure chaos. Tens of thousands of soldiers panicked, crossing at the same time. In that mass, Maxentius was pushed out of the bridge and drowned in the Tiber River, along with many of his men. And at the end of the day, Rome's enemy had died, and with this sign, Constantine had conquered. Victorious, Constantine was welcomed in Rome with a triumph, displaying Maxentius' severed head. But as he did, he refrained from going to the temple of Jupiter, now truly understanding the grander divinity he represented. Instead, he went to the Senate, where the senators implored their master for mercy, proclaiming him the senior and greatest Augustus. And he let them be, for his ire was directed to the other parasites. Seeing his merciful attitude, the Praetorians judged Constantine as yet another emperor they could exploit, and awaited to be bribed to ensure their loyalty, just waiting for an opportunity to betray him in the future.
Nah.
However, The time had finally come. The time for a new age. The time for revenge.
Praetorian
and so
less
Constantine proclaimed
fuck.
that the Praetorian Guard would be abolished.
Yes. Oh, this definitely is more copyrighted than the last one, I guarantee. I reckon 5 different videos. I hope it's not blocked. That's my main concern. True. Have to put a tag violence on this one, don't I? Like, I don't care what Constantine did through his entire life or entire reign. For this, I would call him the Great forevermore. Rio de Lende, EST, Eastern Standard Time. I don't think that's what that means, but...
It took hundreds of years, but now Rome's betrayed emperors could finally rest in peace, with Constantine's deeds forever immortalized in the triumphal arc he then built in Rome. Displaying both his pagan and Christian beliefs, Constantine issued currency bearing Sol Invictus, and in others the Cairo, which he now understood as both sides of the same coin. Constantine then met with Licinius in Mediolanum, married him to his sister as promised, and together they issued the Edict of Milan, officially legalizing Christianity in the Roman Empire, although only one of them actually meant it. But when Daia heard of Maxentius' defeat, he was way back in the Syrian desert and immediately marched west. On his way, he continued persecuting Christians non-stop, in clear violation of the Edict of Milan. Nevertheless, Constantine said he would pardon him if he vowed to follow the law from now on, which Daia refused, gathering some 70,000 men.
You're that fucking confident. Not Byzantium, you dick!
Civil war, Constantine had no time
Leave
to
it be.
reinforce Licinius' army before he
It'll be useful
off.
later.
So to boost their spirits, Licinius was then visited by an angel, which handed him a prayer that would work for all interpretations of the one true God, be it Jupiter, Sol, Yahweh, whatever. His speech given, Licinius faced Daia's overwhelming numbers at Zeralum, the city where Aurelian had once been betrayed decades back. Confident in his numbers, Daia just stayed in the defensive, knowing that Licinius' men would soon give up. Eventually their incessant attacking proved him wrong, but too late for him by then. As his army was crushed, he crossed the Bosphorus Strait, fleeing to Anatolia. Making a
guess he can swim unlike the Emperor.
Probus and fortified himself in the Cilician gates
Just
against
saying.
Licinius, who didn't actually bother facing him in person, sending his legions alone, who then crushed Daia's forces anyway. Fleeing to Tarsus, in his last moments, he then larped as Galerius, proclaiming an end to the persecutions, accepting the Edict of Milan, and then dying, also painfully. Now in charge over the Eastern Empire, the vices of power made Licinius show his true colors. With that, he massacred Daia's entire family, executed Severus' second son for being a friend
Has
of
hair
his,
for
and then
horns.
hunted down Diocletian's wife and daughter, murdering them both.
You
Hearing
bastard.
of this horrific carnage from afar, Constantine's alliance with Licinius immediately began deteriorating. And as that happened, Armenia had gotten a new king again, a Christian this time, who then proclaimed Christianity as Armenia's state religion, outlawing all other pagan interpretations of God, a premonition if there ever was one. And talking of Christianity, Constantine was facing the greatest threat to Christianity's success, Christcockery. More precisely, the tendency of Christians to engage in petty squabbles over abstract garbage to the detriment of unity, law, and order. You see, Aurelian was the first Roman emperor to dabble into Christian issues by their own request, and now being Constantine's turn, he was asked to resolve the Donatist issue regarding the Christians that had complied with the persecutions. And the Donatists would keep asking for more and more favors, so getting on his nerve that Constantine demanded them to fucking shut up, which they eventually did. As the years passed,
All
Fausta
right.
would bear Constantine 6 children: Constantine II, Constantius
Oh, no.
II,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Constans, plus another 3 girls: Constantina, Elena, and Fausta, but who cares?
The
And
first
Constantia
one
also bore a child with
scares me.
Licinius as well, Licinius II. This will be one fucked family tree for a while. And with so many potential heirs, Constantine then proposed to revive Diocletian's tetrarchy. Sending Julius to speak with Licinius, Constantine then married Anastasia to Bassianus, a friend of Senecio, who was BFFs with Licinius, proposing to elevate him as Caesar alongside Crispus, Constantine's now grown eldest son, to which Licinius refused outright, later ordering Senecio to order Bassianus to go and murder Constantine in his sleep. However, Bassianus hadn't been the first one to try that, completely failing in his plot and getting executed for the attempt.
Nice.
And when Constantine demanded Senecio to be handed over for judgment, Licinius refused, tearing down all of Constantine's statues in his realm, and thus declaring war. And wait a second here, the empire was now split west and east among 2 men with family ties who hated each other on the precipice of civil war? Well, if God wants to replay the Augustus arc so bad, he can't blame me for already knowing who the Livia of this story is. So yeah, Constantine then led a force of 20,000
I remember
men
a little bit.
into Illyria, and
Barely.
Licinius gathered 35,000 men
I remember
and
it
marched
happening.
west. They finally clashed in Pannonia, where the infantry clashed for hours, Constantine flanked and destroyed the enemy forces, and Licinius just fled in the dark of night. Fleeing to the east, Licinius raised one of his generals, Valens, as his
Nice
co-Augustus to ensure his loyalty. Remember that name, it's kinda confusing. After declining a peace treaty, getting fucked on the battlefield, and escaping again, it was only after encircling Constantine to no avail that he felt secure enough to negotiate. Constantine then forced Licinius to recognize him as the senior Augustus, took everything west of Thrace, and had Valens executed. That done, Constantine then formed a new
No,
tetrarchy
why
of
did
his
you
own,
leave him
elevating
alive?
Crispus and Constantine II as Caesars, with Licinius II added in as another fifth wheel. He then moved his capital to Sirmium so he could keep an eye on Licinius up close, sending Crispus to go defend the west from barbarians in his name, protecting Gaul from 3 massive Germanic invasions, and being as talented as his
Germs,
father,
fuck off.
Crispus became just as loved and
Like a
admired
Skyrim
by
shout.
all. And back to Licinius, he
Dragon
disobeyed
shout.
his own edict and started persecuting Christians again, plain just ignoring that whole angel thing, I guess. As he wasted his time on that, Constantine was defending the Danube from both Goths and Sarmatians, crushing them both in battle and even killing the new Gothic king before he caused much trouble. Thing is,
Nice.
the barbarians began invading through
Rare
Licinius'
sight to
side
see.
instead, forcing
king being
Constantine
killed,
to
but-
constantly cross the border and
Good.
clean up the mess. And instead of helping him defend his citizens, he declared war on Constantine again, gathering 165,000 men to fight Constantine's 130,000.
Stupidest
Fortifying
people
himself
become
beside the river by
emperors
Adrianople,
in this,
Licinius
don't they?
also betrayed civilization and recruited a huge Gothic horde to serve him. Constantine, however, bound a whole Frankish horde into his service, binding them with the divine magic of his Cairo standard. Facing Licinius,
Alright.
Constantine found a good spot to cross the river, ordering a bridge to be built far away as a distraction. And once Licinius fell for the bait, Constantine crossed and flanked his lines, pushing him back and casting his standard's divine magic on his own legions, blessing them with so much power he made Licinius
God.
this time to Byzantium, naming yet another general as co-emperor, some
fuck
dude
is
named
that?
Martinian, who he then sent east to gather a new army for him. And despite
An
being
alien
injured,
in a
Constantine
helmet?
pressed on. But after realizing just how fucking hard it was to siege Byzantium, he ordered his son Crispus back from the west to lead his naval campaign. Sent to face Licinius' fleet while vastly outnumbered in battle, not only did Crispus win decisively, but God then sent a storm to destroy the remaining ships, leaving only 4 survivors.
Just
After
God
his catastrophe,
now, not
Licinius
Sol.
then fled to Anatolia, and was pursued by Constantine
Jupiter.
all the way to Chrysopolis. So desperate he became that he started praying to Jupiter and company for help, despite them being derivative of the god he had so recently scorned. So desperate, in fact, he grew to
You
fear Constantine's
dumbass.
divine standard above everything else, forbidding his troops to attack in its direction, or to even look at it. Resorting to just charging his Goths at him, Constantine ordered one massive charge forward, killing tens of thousands and making Licinius flee one final time. And after fleeing to Nicaea, Licinius sent his wife Constantia to go plead for his life, which he did, and as Constantine couldn't deny his sister's request, Licinius was allowed to live, being imprisoned in Thessalonica and Martinian in Cappadocia. But soon after he was set free by his adolescent son Licinius, and together they conspired with the Goths to link him together with their hordes and then kill Constantine,
Daedra armor.
but getting caught in the attempt. and for having conspired with barbarians against
They
their
were
emperor,
their
plus
swords,
all
so
of
I
their
know.
other crimes, they were both hanged to death, leaving Constantine as the sole emperor of the whole empire. And with said empire now reunited and at peace, Constantine focused on amending its relationship with Christianity. It was no wonder why past emperors persecuted them so much, but with it now revealed as a true faith, Constantine began integrating them as proper citizens. To rule an empire at peace, Constantine chose to favor Christianity as his favorite faith, becoming the first Christian emperor in history. A wise move given how fast Christianity was spreading, and seeing the writing on the wall, Constantine acted appropriately. Persecuted Christians were recompensated for their losses, their leaders allowed entry into the government, and the declining pagan institutions, though still entirely legal and respected, were placed second to Christianity. By distancing them from Hebrew and into Latin, by fully integrating them into the empire as citizens and governors, Christianity became an increasingly Roman faith, and eventually a civilizing faith. And to appease the increasingly Christian masses, Constantine built countless
I actually have
churches
no
in
idea what the difference between Catholic and Christian is. And I don't know when Catholic starts. I have no idea what Catholic really is. I know they're very similar, but some difference. I don't know.
Right. Among them, the original St.
Maybe
Peter's Cathedral,
one of these videos
built
will
over
teach
where
me.
Nero had executed him, if only to send a message. All that said, Constantine had absolutely no patience for Christ's cookery in his empire, and he was about to face a big one, the Arian heresy. It had all to do with a Christian autism called the Trinity. Get this, God is apparently the Father,
the God, the
Son,
Father, and the Holy Spirit. Yeah.
who are somehow not each other. Not that far from Constantine's true Trinity, to be honest, but let's do this the Christian way from now on. But that wasn't Arius' contention though. He accepted the Trinity as a concept. He just decided to be a divisive cunt by proclaiming, loudly, that the Son was inferior to the Father, when the standard thought was that they were equal, consubstantial. Now Constantine really didn't give a shit about any of that, but he was really annoyed to see it become the extremely divisive issue in the church it became.
Wow.
Seeing how petty this conflict was, and with the empire's religious unity at stake, Constantine proclaimed a global council of bishops would be held in Nicaea to settle the matter. The First Ecumenical Council of Nicaea. Hundreds of bishops attended, overseen and mediated by Constantine himself. Tempers flared, fights broke out, but with the emperor's gaze upon them, they all unanimously decided,
grab?
for 2 votes, that Arianism was indeed heresy, ending with the unrelenting Arius getting banished to Illyria. And in exile, Arius suffered the fate of a divisive heretic, suddenly getting diarrhea, running for the bathroom, falling, getting a hemorrhage, and dying in a pool of his own piss and shit. Which then takes us to Crispus.
A lot of
By
people
being
do,
a
to be
war
honest.
hero, as well as the spitting image of his father, but younger, his stepmother Fausta was taken over with lust for him, leading her to try and seduce Crispus one night.
Oh, shit.
But Crispus rejected her with
Condolence.
disgust, thus pushing her to live up to the other stepmother stereotype. To get her revenge,
Do I
to
wanna
secure
pause
her
on
own
that?
son's ascension to
No.
power, knowing that magic wouldn't work on Constantine, Fausta claimed that Crispus had tried to rape her and was plotting to murder him. Believing her and completely devastated, Constantine then had his eldest son seized, tried, and executed. But the pain of losing his beloved son wouldn't lessen. For while visiting his mother Helena in Rome, as he lamented his loss, she told him the truth, that Fausta had lied to him.
It's kind of the, was it believe or women thing that was going on? I don't know, it still is, like a movement or something. Which is a good thing, but women can lie and then just ruin relationship with, or a person with public, with friends, with families and stuff like that. Just like a great example is the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard thing. It's not about what happened here and not about what I forgot what is it, Believe All Women stands for. At least I don't think. I think it's about rape and stuff. Mostly, I don't know. But it's just how one lie, even though she lied, Johnny Depp still lost a lot of things. Anyway, derailed.
Now angrier than ever before,
Stop.
Constantine threw Fausta into a bathing room and cranked up the heat until she suffocated to death. Now
Oof.
deprived of both
All right.
enemies and loved ones, that weren't Crispus, Constantine focused back on the empire, with its capital particularly in mind. It had long become a cesspool of degeneracy, its political and economical influence diminished away, and its strategic position grown more and more an issue. What the empire needed for a capital was a centrally located city, like in between continents, had a nice harbor, like in between two different seas, was close enough to volatile borders, like the Danube, and was so easily defensible that it could just build one massive wall on one of its sides and defend it for over 1,000 years Byzantium. It needed Byzantium.
Whoa!
Here, near where his Trojan ancestors once stood, where his mentor Diocletian...
As soon as the capital brought up, I'm thinking that it's maybe about Byzantium. Like, that's an obvious way the thought goes, knowing the future, but as soon as the map was shown of this region, it's like, yeah, okay, it is Byzantium.
And right beside where the greatest emperor Aurelian was assassinated, Constantine was visited by an archangel, who confirmed this was where he was to build his new city.
Which one?
Constantine thus proclaimed the birth of a second Rome, a new Rome, Nova Roma, or as it was eventually named, the city of Constantine.
Oh, Constantinople. Yeah.
And after helping delineate
I fucking forgot that that's a thing.
The archangel vanished, and Constantine officially transformed Constantinople into the empire's new capital. And after emulating Romulus so much, he returned to emulating Augustus's miserable last years as one of the longest reigning emperors of all time. During his last years, he reinstituted the spirit of the Lex Julia, severely punishing any and all degenerate behavior, most especially in his new capital, using biblical scripture to drill it into every Christian pleb's heads. And in that vibe, he sent his virtuous mother Helena to a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, returning with the pieces of the true cross, the very stick the dead Jew was on. Using all of his funds, he finished his new capital, and even created a new senate for it. It had thousands of senators and was just as useless as the one back in Rome. And as a true student of Diocletian, Constantine issued many reforms of his own. Most importantly, the last major reform of the Roman military. We still had comitatenses limiting the navy and all, but now subdued barbarian hordes had a name, Federati. And the legates and duxes that ruled them were now led by the Magister Peditum and Magister Equitum, masters of foot and horses. And above them was the Magister Militum, master of armies, topped only by the emperor himself. And to provide future
it's like general lieutenants kind of deal.
Constantine created the Palatini Palace Guards, which due to being elite soldiers and being denied the depravities of Praetorians, would prove to be far more loyal. But as he reformed the armies, Constantine saw the rise of many half-Germans in the legions, with his suspicion of them shared by a young soldier recruit, Valentinian, whom held a hatred for Germans greater than any Roman that had ever lived. And so much had Constantine...
I feel like there is someone at one point has the most hate for somebody, like to the plebs, to the Jews, now to the Germans. There was to the Gauls, right?
Beaten the barbarians over the decades, that he got away with building a bridge over the Rhine and rebuilding Trajan's bridge in the Danube, once slaughtering 100,000 Goths and retaking Lower Dacia. But if you will remember, it still is all downhill from here. For Constantine's rule would prove to be the last golden age of Rome. From here on, the empire would face an increasingly devastating crisis of instability, treachery, civil wars, and barbarian invasions worse than any nightmare. And it was all confirmed by the heirs he was doomed to pass the empire to. Of his three sons, Constantine II was the opposite of his father.
Yeah, that was obvious.
Constantius II was intelligent and strong, but had grown cynical and distant due to Faustus' upbringing. And Constans
Caspis or whatever his name was.
He loved Dick, very unchristian. So he then looked onto his nephews, like the sons of Constantius' new marriage, Dalmatius and Hannibalianus, as well as the sons of Julius, like Gallus, the step-grand-grand-grand-grand-grand-grandson of Caracalla, and also his half-brother, a very young Julian, in whom he sensed the most potential, but had to ignore due to his age. After giving it some thought, he sought again to revive the tetrarchy by giving the west to Constantine II, Italy and its surroundings to Constans, the east to Constantius II, and both Thrace and Greece to Dalmatius. As for Hannibalianus, he was named King of Kings. And yeah, that implies what you think it implies. That's right, Constantine gave the entire unconquered Sassanid Empire to his nephew, as a sloppy seconds at that, on top of claiming that all Christians in the East were under his own personal protection, the madman, which was something that Shapur's great-grandson, Shapur II, used as an excuse to invade the empire and destroy civilization. The peace broken, Constantine prepared to fuck their shit up, only to realize how fucked his own shit was. So weak and ill he became that after praying to God for answers, he realized he was about to die. He was then rushed west towards Constantinople, seeking to die in the city he had built. But alas, he could only make as far
used in the videos?
After a life of service for the one true God, Constantine sought to legitimize the Christian faith once and for all. So as his final wish, he asked to be baptized. Cleansed away of all sin, despite having none, Constantine gave up to the call from high above, and left this mortal realm one final time. Having ruled as Rome's emperor for over 3 decades, he displayed wisdom and virtue, was never defeated in battle, defended the empire from barbarians countless times, reunited Rome after a terrible civil war, transformed Christianity into a Roman civilizing faith, and gave the empire a new capital that would stand for over 1,000 years. And it is for these reasons, and 1,000 reasons more, that history will forever remember him as Constantine the Great.
Hell yeah. I don't know how to feel when a great emperor dies like this. I'm sad. He's had a good reign, but he still died like not finishing what he wanted. And that makes me sad. But when Praetorians were Jesus, I don't expect that head on there. Oh, no more comments. That's what I was going for. Oh well. But when Praetorians were killing, I was left angry. I wanted to destroy the Praetorian Guard, of course. But that didn't happen. Not this time. And hopefully never again, because they were abolished, and I hope no remnants of any kind are left. Fuck them. Let them rot in hell. That's all I wanted to say. Wait, I wonder. Actually, how do ra in Portuguese? Oh yeah, because he's Brazilian. Yeah. Portuguese makes sense. I didn't know there are subtitles. Maybe I'll start next video. Starting with the next video, I'll be watching with subtitles. Maybe it'll be more helpful for some people when I talk over things, and for me to when I'm talking over it to read instead of hear. That'll be easier. But for now, thank you, anybody who watched this. I appreciate it a lot, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye. Have a great life, because one of us has to.